We mentioned the Draymond Green connection, really an extension of a few conversations we've had this week because Ethan Strauss, big fan of his writing, actually wrote an article that was sort of based around the concept that's come up on this show called draftism, and said that it's something that he's sort of viewed as a dynamic with Draymond Green through the years. And the comparison to me is maybe less about where they were drafted, because I don't know if a second-round pick in the NBA is equal to a seventh-round pick in the NFL. But what I see and what I hear that is very similar for these two guys is the concept that if they were on a different team, they would, and then fill in blank. And for the most part, it's people saying would not be as good.
Right.
Or in some cases, would flat out stink. I mean, honestly, what would Draymond on the Pistons look like? And truthfully, sure, we don't know. Are people buoyed by their surroundings? There's no doubt. Greatness always has to fall into great situations. The world thinks Michael Jordan never lost a playoff game, but he did. Scottie Pippen wasn't there. They never won the championship. He needed help too. Would they have won without him? No. Would he have won without what was around him? I think probably not, or certainly a whole lot less. So that's inherent in all of these conversations. But certain guys, and I do think their draft position, and in some cases their body, like Draymond Green, is not like, he doesn't look like LeBron James, and Brock Purdy doesn't look like Josh Allen. So their draft position and their body stop us from thinking that their skill set would travel. And I'm not telling you that Brock Purdy would be 4-0 on every football team, but I am telling you that most football teams' records would be better if Brock Purdy were their quarterback.
I also think that stats play a part of this, and it's more for Draymond than it is Brock Purdy. But when you look at Brock's numbers and you see a guy who throws for about 220 yards a game for the most part, yeah, he scores 30 points, but that's more of a function of the team in terms of the team scores those points. He's a part of the team. He gets credit for it, but it's much like when the Warriors are averaging 115 a night, you don't look at Draymond Green and say, yeah, they're averaging $115 a night because of Draymond Green's offense. No, it's Steph and it's Clay and it's all the rest of it. So I do think that the numbers of it plays a heavier role for Draymond than it does Brock Purdy, but that's part of the Brock Purdy hate, because if you don't really watch the games, and not everybody watches the games, we make our judgments based on what the numbers tell us. He doesn't often put up eye-popping numbers.
No, he doesn't often put up eye-popping numbers because the 49ers are very balanced. They run the ball well, all of that. However, he does put up some numbers that eye-pop. Like, I'm not overwhelmed by 300 or 400 yards. Do you know what it means if your guy throws for 400 yards?
It means you're probably losing.
There you go. It means that you're like, you need to. You know who threw for 400 yards a few weeks ago? Kirk Cousins. He lost. He lost in Philadelphia. Why did he throw for 400 yards? Because they were down the whole game. The defense couldn't stop anybody. Why on earth people want the 49ers? Thank you. Why do the people want the 49ers? Throw for 300 yards. Well, I'm sorry. They're up 27-10 at the moment, and they've got brains. So why do you want them to sling it? That would be stupid. But let's play this game. Let me throw out some teams. And 888-957-9570, what do you think Brock Purdy would look like on another team? Let's bite. Let's go into it. What if I gave you a few teams? You tell me what they would look like if he were on their team. Like, okay, what would be a really, really good example here? What about the Las Vegas Raiders? Let's start there. They're 1-3. They've got an elite receiver. They've got an elite running back. And supposedly, I know his reputation has been sullied a little bit this year, but supposedly an elite play caller as their head coach. They're 1-3. They've lost their quarterback for one game, okay? But outside of that, they're 1-2. What do the Raiders look like if Brock Purdy's their quarterback?
They're probably a game better. I still think that that's a flawed team with a flawed roster and a play caller who, yes, his reputation has been, quote, sullied. He actually might be, well, if Al Davis was still with us, RIP, he would be the first coach fired. I don't think he ever would have been hired but let's pretend he would have been hired anyway. He would be the first coach fired in the National Football League. This would not be tolerated by Mr. Davis, not Mark Davis, but Mr. Davis. This team is not very good, but they're better than what they've showed, especially over the last 3 games. I'd say they're probably 2-2, though. They beat the Steelers if they have Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. Hell, they might beat the Chargers, too, to be honest with you. Here's another one. And I'm not just going to go around to the quarterbacks who are not performing, but I do think this tells a story. How would the Jets look with Brock Purdy as their quarterback?
Geez, they would be a lot better. And, Zach Wilson has played better, in recent days, but last week he played much better, still took the L, but I think the Jets, if they would have lost Aaron Rodgers the way they lost him and they would have gone to Brock Purdy, a guy who knows a thing about coming off the bench, they're probably 2-2. I don't know if they're 3-1, but they probably have another win.
I think they're 3-1.
They beat the Patriots, and
I think
they beat the Chiefs.
I sure do.
I mean, the Chiefs kind of gave that to him on a platter, and they were unable to take it.
And I know Zach had his best game there. He threw for 245, but his high receiving yardage receiver was 61. Like it's not like the offense was humming. The defense set him up a bunch of times. They sort of took advantage of it, not quite enough, but yeah. I think they beat the Chiefs, and I think they beat the Patriots if Brock Purdy's their quarterback.
Yeah, for sure they beat the Patriots, and the Chiefs, I mean, that was a game that they should have beaten with Zach Wilson, so I can't say you're wrong there.
I wonder if we go to some teams, though, that are getting, at least decent quarterback play. How about this one? What would the Lions look like with Brock Purdy? What's that record? They're 3-1. They won at Kansas City, only scored 21 points, got a pick 6. Lost in overtime at home to Seattle, and then a grinder game over Atlanta, offense humming in a win at Lambeau, although that was largely driven by the running game.
Yeah, I think they're probably in the same spot. I mean, Jared Goff has been good. He's been, more than functional.
Yeah.
And you mentioned they're 3-1 with an impressive win on the opening game of the season at Kansas City. Nobody saw them winning that game. Obviously bolstered by the defense in that one, and the offense wasn't the problem at home against Seattle. So they're probably 3-1. I think Jared Goff has had a good year and, a Pro Bowl caliber year. I know everybody makes the Pro Bowl now, but Purdy having a little bit of a better year than Jared Goff, but not by a lot.
Yeah, Goff, how many times has Goff thrown? He's thrown 3 picks already this year.
Already, I mean, that used to be an afternoon for Jared.
Exactly.
Back when I was telling him to hang in there.
But I mean, 3 picks in 4 games, like you're on pace for what? Like
12. 13.
Yeah,
in theory.
It's a little hot. It's not terrible, but it's a little higher than you'd want it to be
in the modern day, where you don't want anyone to throw picks.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app. Twitch and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. I mean, what I'm gathering from you so far, I mean, sure, nothing definitive, and there's no way to know exactly how this would all look, but I'm gathering from you so far that we haven't talked about any teams. Nobody would, go down, and some teams would go up. I mean, what if, okay, take us to the elite spots. What are the Bills with Brock Purdy as their quarterback?
They're probably in the same spot. I mean, I don't think that they lose any game that they have otherwise, would have won.
You know what's crazy? I think they're 4-0.
You think they...
The one game they lost, Josh Allen was terrible, and it was because of turnovers. Now, I would take Josh over Brock. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But if you think of what Brock does well, what he does well is what Josh didn't do well in that game and lost them that game. And the other 3 were total runaways, which I don't think Brock loses. They may not score as many, but they didn't need to. I mean, they have won 3 games in a row by at least 4 touchdowns. They are pummeling people.
Yes.
So
that Jets game was a weird one.
Really weird.
And the Jets defense is nasty. So if you want to talk about, this conversation after Sunday night against Dallas, I think we'll have a better idea of how Brock can do with this sort of a pressurized situation because the Jets, they lost Aaron Rodgers in that game, and then they proceeded to absolutely get after Josh Allen. And at least one of those interceptions I'm remembering was a terrible, terrible throw, but the Jets got after him. And we'll see if Dallas does the same thing Sunday night and how Brock responds.
One of the few that I would actually send in the other direction for a little bit of a, intricate reason, if you will. The Chargers might be 0-4 if Brock Purdy was their quarterback.
Wow.
They might be 0-4 because their coach tries to lose the game, and he often does. So they're 2-2, and if you follow Charger football, they're only the two wins have come because of late picks at the goal line, where they were all set up to lose against Minnesota and the Raiders, not good teams. Now, I would argue that if Brock Purdy's there over Justin Herbert, your run game is even less effective because you can attack the line of scrimmage more than you can against Justin Herbert. And also, Herbert has honestly, he has objectively been unbelievable. Statistically, almost perfect. He's only thrown one pick, but he's really, right now, so far this year, the best downfield quarterback in the game. And the Chargers have barely won 2 football games.
They barely lost 2 football games.
That's true, too. But if Purdy's their quarterback, it might be 0-4. Not because of him, but because of their coach.
And because of what that means to have a less mobile, less dangerous sort of a deep thrower in Brock Purdy as opposed to Justin Herbert. Herbert, with just the one pick you mentioned, 71% completion percentage, despite being sacked 9 times. So offensive line not as good as it is in San Francisco, and yet Herbert is putting up similar numbers to Brock Purdy.
How many QBs in the NFL have the Niners at 4-0?
Have the Niners at 4-0. I'd say safely probably 6-8. Because honestly,
I think that's fair.
Yeah, if you look at how they are 4-0, there hasn't been a lot of high leverage offensive football. You've been pretty efficient with McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk, and then the Debo game that we talked about. Brock Purdy's been very good. I'm not trying to diminish what he's done, and I said this earlier in the week, he hasn't made a ton of high leverage, pressurized throws. It's been a lot of guys open, and there's been a lot of scheme victories, and Brock Purdy's delivering the ball. This is no disrespect, but if you talk about other quarterbacks who are having good years or quarterbacks who are elite in this league, could they be making these same throws that Brock is making? I think there's probably 6 to 8 guys you could say yes.
It's funny. You're tiptoeing in the neighborhood of the dynamic I'm talking about.
And I don't want to go there.
I know you don't.
Until Monday when they lose, and then I bury him.
Like, the dynamic I'm talking about is...
I've used the word before, too, and I'll use it again.
Anybody who is trying to say that they like Brock Purdy, they're trying to say that, and then they're like, right, so he's good, and then...
He's really good.
But his scheme... system.
There's the S word. Oh,
there's
yeah. All the S words. S-bombs.
I'm really at a spot where I'm like, I don't think you get to do that.
I just did.
No,
Marlo.
You can do it, but don't say that you're not. Don't say that you're not ripping Purdy because you are.
I'm not.
You are.
You asked me how many quarterbacks would have them be 4-0. I said 6 to 8.
Yes.
And you agreed.
But
how is that ripping Brock Purdy?
Because
Tell me,
that's
Mark.
a previous statement. You called the 49ers wins this year scheme victories. And this is what I'm trying to get at. How many football games so far this year in the NFL has there not been a scheme on offense?
They've all had a scheme.
Thank you.
Some schemes are better than other schemes.
That's
and
true.
His scheme is the schemiest scheme in the National Football League.
Yeah, but you know what's wild? Here's what no one wants to say. I'm ready to say it.
Say it.
You know.
Sick of it.
You know who? Let's put 2 quarterbacks side by side. You want to know who looks better this year between these two? I'll give you 2 names. One of them's Brock Purdy, and the other one's Patrick Mahomes. Ask me who's having a better year.
Well, I don't have to. You're going to answer it on your own.
And it's obvious. In fact, it's not even close. He's thrown for more yards. He's thrown fewer picks. He's got a better record. Explain to me how Patrick Mahomes has done anything better than Brock Purdy this year?
Well, he doesn't have the same scheme. He lost his offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, and they don't have the same level of talent that the Niners have.
Andy Reid's not an offensive coach?
He's all right.
Because the 49ers, does anybody even know who the Niners offensive coordinator is?
It's Kyle Shanahan.
Thank you. And it's also Andy Reid. Okay?
Well, it was Eric Bieniemy.
I understand that, but you know who is drafting the scheme in Kansas City? His name is Andy Flippin' Reid.
You're not going to sit here and tell me, and maybe you are, and I want to hear it from your mouth.
Let's go.
That Kansas City's skill guys are as good as the Niners' skill guys.
I didn't say that, and they're not.
I'm just asking you if that's how you think.
They're
because
not.
I don't think it's even close.
Not
you
this
take
year.
their tight end over the Niners' tight end.
Yeah.
End of list where Kansas City is better. So, yes, Mahomes is not having as good a year, and I think Mahomes has maybe played tougher teams than the Niners have played, and part of it is contextual, that he doesn't have the same weapons that Brock Purdy does.
Okay, but Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, for years, these are guys who, the perception is that he's making the receiver more than the other way around. But this is somebody who played for years with Tyreek Hill, the fastest receiver in the game. Travis Kelce. They've definitely had a lot of production out of the backfield and got it the other night. Huge game from who I think is an underrated player in Isaiah Pacheco. Am I going to put their skill guys up against the Niners' skill guys? Hell no. Of course not. But since when does that mean quarterbacking works? Because you know that I can give you a list of NFL teams who have a really good running back and a really good receiving core, and it doesn't mean the quarterback is automatically good. Like, we got to stop saying that Brock Purdy is a production of having good weapons.
It's certainly a part of it.
Tons of guys have good weapons.
I don't think that you could find more than 3 other teams that have a running back, a tight end, and 2 receivers that are as good as what Brock Purdy has. I'd be interested, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No.
Because if you want to go across the National Football League and find all 3 of those groups where you've got Christian McCaffrey at running back, he's probably, number 1.
What if I argued this? And sure, we're going to go. McCaffrey there's no equal. He's the best.
Correct.
Okay, so they're going to win that battle. But what if I argued this? At least in the neighborhood, what if I gave you Philadelphia?
It's in the neighborhood.
Okay.
I thought you were going to go Cincinnati.
A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and DeAndre Swift, and what other headed monster wants to go alongside him?
I think we look at the top 4.
Okay, they're very, very, very good. Very good. And my only argument would be, because the Eagles are also 4-0.
Yeah.
Not once, and he's a young player who was not a first-round draft pick. I've never heard someone say that the reason Jalen Hurts is good is because of all that around him.
He's done more than Brock Purdy in this league. He's been to a Super Bowl. He was the number 1 seed last year. He was a borderline MVP candidate. Are you saying that he hasn't done more than Brock Purdy in this league?
I'm not saying that. He's had more time, and obviously an unfair situation when the 2 of them got together to meet, and Brock didn't get to play.
Right. Well, he got to play. And he got knocked out. Yeah, right. Only one of those 2 quarterbacks was unable to survive the game.
Correct. And you can make that his fault if you want.
I'm not trying to blame him.
No.
I'm just pointing out the fact that one man played all 4 quarters. I don't even know if he played all 4 quarters. I think it was a blowout.
No, he did.